Hello. Hi. Welcome again. I think I saw most of you as you came in. I'm Shirley Wright. I'm so glad that on this busy night you chose to come and share it with us, your community of neighbors. We're just glad that you are here. And I wanted to check and see if we have any folks who are here for the first time tonight. If you would raise your hand. All right. Great. 3 or 4, we are so glad to have you here, along with our speaker, and hope that we get to know you better. We are grateful for all the good dishes that our cooks have brought tonight, thanks to you who prepared dishes, and I am also thankful for our setup team, Bill Cannon, and all the guys, all the people, Cheryl and Bud Matlock, who helped them make this work. So when we were here the last time in September, we asked each table, we gave everybody a form to fill out on programs that you would like for the year ahead. And then after the meeting, we sent an email to everybody who hadn't been here, who were members that night, and asked them to share their ideas. And we've tabulated all those, and so we'll start rolling those programs out. I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end of the meeting. But near the top of that list that was of what you wanted was the desire to hear from our new community development director. And so that is the program that we planned as our last program this year, and the one that we're going to have tonight. So to introduce Patricia Sinel and then facilitate your questions that have already been sent to us, as well as some of the new ones, we're going to introduce first Dr. Becky Setliff, who many of you know, who will introduce Patricia and then turn the program over to her. So Becky, over to you.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
It's nice to get a little bit of feedback already. I'm not feeling particularly energetic. Usually my energy is out here, but it's a little subdued tonight, so I don't know how much entertaining I'm going to be able to do. But I do have the pleasure of introducing someone who is new to our family here on Tybee, and I call it family because that's indeed what we try to be. Some days more successfully than others, but always family. Some days perhaps a little dysfunctional family, but always a family. So we have with us tonight Patricia J. And I was insistent that I had to say her middle initial name because I share that. Sinel, and she is Community Development Director. Community Development Director. How did she get here, you might ask? Well, it was a somewhat circuitous route because she first got a Bachelor of Arts, History, Anthropology, and Anthropology at Metropolitan State University of Denver. Yes. Oh, is that better?
Yes.
I've done a lot of public speaking. I absolutely hate noise. Okay, but I promise I will do better. Okay, she also has a Master of Urban and Regional Planning from the University of New Orleans. So Denver, New Orleans. Okay, she also came to us from a job with the City of Arlington, Texas, as planning manager. Prior to that, she was planning and development professional at Villavasso, Villavasso and Associates, LLC, in New Orleans. Prior to that, she was, here we go. She was a graduate assistant in urban design. She worked in planning and permitting. And she was a machinist mate, active duty, and utilities man, reserve duty with the U.S. Navy. We thank you for that service in particular. Yes. I could go on and on about the organizations that she is a member of, the associations that she participates in, to maintain her high level of knowledge in this field, which is constantly changing, and you can believe that, and her registrations in organizations. But if I did that, it would take way too much time, and it's not about that, it's about her individually. So without further ado, I will invite to the podium Patricia Sinel, our new Community Development Director.
Thank you, Becky. So for all of you who don't know me, I started back in July 22nd. I will be soon my 4-month anniversary with the City of Tybee, and I appreciate it, and I appreciate you all, and I thank you for all of your support. I do want to introduce my youngest son, who did show up. So Joey, if you stand up. So if you see him on North Beach, he looks exactly like he should be on North Beach. I started my planning career about 25 years ago. After I got out of the Navy, I was working in residential construction, and as Becky said, I was a CB, construction battalion, and then I was 4 years active duty on a ship before that. I have one deployment for Operation Joint Guard, which was Bosnia. And so, but when I got out of active duty, and my husband was also active duty, but he spent 22 years in. And then he spent 15 years teaching, so he had a different battleground after that. But going forward, so I got out, started working in residential construction. We were living in Colorado at the time, and then my husband got recalled back to active duty, where he stayed on active duty. But we ended up in New Orleans, and I thought, my God, what am I gonna do? We just moved here. At the time, my youngest son was still a little kid. My oldest son was still a little kid. And so we're in New Orleans, and so I take like a BuzzFeed quiz. Have you ever taken those? Like, what are you gonna, what are you good at? And so what should you do, when you grow up? What job should you have? And so I took it, and it said I should either be an urban planner or a park ranger. So, University of New Orleans did not have a degree in park ranger, but so I used my GI Bill and got my master's in urban and regional planning, and honestly, it was a great BuzzFeed quiz, because here I am, 25 years later. But I started working, immediately. I was a graduate assistant for urban design, and then I got a job where I lied to get it. So I was sitting next to one of the adjunct professors who taught a land use law class. We shared an office, and he looked at, and I said, "Hey, Steve, you got any work for me?" And he said, "Do you know GIS?" And I said, "Oh, absolutely I do. I'd taken one class." So that started a whole GIS, cartography love of mine, but I'm pretty much self-taught, but I've always done maps because I love maps. But it started, I worked for Steve for over 20 years until he decided to retire. I ended up, I think I was like vice president of planning and, technical services or something like that. But about that time, I decided, I probably like sleeping in my own bed, because I was out of New Orleans, wherever my husband's duty station was. So while he was still active duty, I was still working out of New Orleans, and so I traveled quite a bit. And I got tired of not sleeping in my own bed, and so I wanted to be home. So 5 years ago, I decided that I should work in municipal government. And that is what led me to Tybee. So I worked for the City of Keller first in Texas, then the City of Arlington, where I headed up long-range planning and strategic planning. And then when my oldest son and his family moved to the Savannah area at the beginning of the year, I was traveling here every month. And I was like, you know what? This is much more interesting than Texas. So I applied for a job out here. I saw that there was an opening on Tybee. My first time on Tybee was over Easter weekend. And so I'm like, this is amazing. And so I saw that there was a job opening for community development director, and I reached out to Michelle Owen. And lo and behold, she's like, yeah, apply for it. So I did, and I got it. So I'm excited to be here. And with that, I am going to jump into just a little presentation. There's only a handful of slides on here. Well, 2 handfuls. But just to go over some information on what we do in community development, talk a little bit about the land development code, and then some other tasks and duties I have with the City of Tybee, and then I'm going to open it up for any questions, moderated to save my life from that. But I want to talk to you about our land development code is the code that regulates development in the City of Tybee. So anything that goes on with regard to permitting, built environment, that comes through us in community development. This is regulated by our land development code. I want to just give you like a little zoning 101. So if you just go to the next slide, I think I put an animation in here. So, back in the 1920s, there was a zoning case called Euclid versus Ambler about where the first zoning in the United States happened. So this was, went up to Supreme Court where they said, yes, zoning is a power that local government can have that is granted by state, and made it so that zoning could be legal nationwide. But it had to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of the population. And so in any zoning ordinance, and our land development code has our zoning ordinance, it does talk about health, safety, morals, and general welfare. So that is common knowledge you're gonna see in pretty much all land development, other than the morals part. That seems to be a southern thing I've noticed. But you'll see it. And it talks about why we have it, the land development code, and to lessen congestion in streets, secure safety from fire, provide adequate light and air to prevent overcrowding, and also adequate provision of water, sewer, school, parks, and other public requirements, and to encourage the most appropriate use of land throughout the city. So that starts our land development code, and so with that, I'm gonna go to the next slide. Yes. Oh, I am so sorry about that. I'm a wanderer. So this is our land development code, and it's broken out into 15 sections. So, and what I have here too, I did put a QR code. If you want to, take your phone, if you have a smartphone, you can take a picture, or you can just Google the language I put at the top if you want it, and anybody watching later on can also do it as well. But there's a QR code if you want to look at it. But I want to talk about the main parts of our land development code that seem to be, the most popular topics of discussion, including our zoning districts, sign regulations, tree removal, flood damage, soil erosion, and stormwater management. But all of those 15 sections are what we do in community development. So going ahead, I'm going to break out a few, but not going to take that long about it. Just keep going. So zoning districts. In the city of Tybee, we have 11 zoning districts. Those are the ones on the ground. We call them base zoning districts. And there's our zoning district map. If you look, you can see everything is blue is like our R1 residential. That is the zoning district that takes up a lot of it. And so when you look at anything in green, that's our conservation for environmental conservation. Green is parks, but blue and pretty much the yellows are residential, while you look at the reds and the pinks are our commercial zoning districts. So if you look at it overall, you'll notice most of Tybee is zoned residential. We also have 4 overlay districts, which are the south end, and then 2 in the north end, and then we have a neighborhood grocery store. So with that, just to look, that is how the city breaks out, and the zoning districts tells you what you can build there and what dimensions your lot has to be as well. So going on to the next one, I'm just going to briefly touch on tree removal regulations, but just want to remind everybody that if you remove a tree, get a permit. And if you put up a sign, also get a permit. So next one. I want to talk about stormwater management. This is always important because stormwater management on my side is about your on-site stormwater management. Public Works and Pete, they handle the city stormwater management, the storm drains, everything like that. But anything that comes to us in new development and redevelopment, it's on-site stormwater management, meaning you have to control your own runoff. You have to manage it on-site. So next one, and then soil erosion, sedimentation, and pollution control. So this is when you build a site, you'll notice that you'll have the silt fences up to keep your dirt in, because you don't want to pollute our waterways with additional dirt that's running off from your lot. That ends up filling up our drains, it fills up our rivers and streams, and it also makes it so it reduces the capacity, and then we have to dredge more, and then there's more flooding that can happen. So that is why we look at soil erosion and sedimentation and pollution control. All right, one more, and then flood damage prevention. I'm also the city's floodplain administrator. So one of my letters after the name is CFM, which is Certified Floodplain Manager. So I enforce our floodplain ordinance, which is our flood damage prevention ordinance. But this is talks about requiring all construction and new development, and then even additions have to meet our flood ordinance. And then also too, because we're a member of the National Flood Insurance Program with FEMA, we have to meet or exceed FEMA's minimum requirements, which is also in our floodplain ordinance. If we were not a member of the National Flood Insurance Program, we would not be eligible for our flood insurance that we get from FEMA. And also too, we would not be eligible for any grants or funding or emergency funding available in the event of a natural disaster. So want to let you know about that. And what I did last month, we have a community rating system, which is how we get rated for our National Flood Insurance Program. And we have an annual recertification, which I completed last month, which gives the City of Tybee a Class 5 rating. And so the lowest is 10. That means you just meet minimum FEMA standards. For every number you go up is an extra 5% discount in your flood insurance. So right now in the state of Georgia, Tybee, Savannah, and Chatham County are the only ones with 5s. We are the highest in the state. So go on with that. And then I do want to say, for part of this community rating system, this is what something you'll all get in your water bill this coming month, but it's part of our community rating system and our public outreach. And it just talks about 10 facts every Tybee resident should know, and it's going to be coming in your water bill, so you can all be excited. All right, and then once again, if you want to look at our flood page, we do have a lot of elevation certificates that we do have saved at the city. If you need one, we might have it if you know that you have one. But just all our flood information is there as well. You can Google it, or you can use the QR code. So one more. So what we have for upcoming and ongoing projects, I'm going to start with ongoing, our hazard mitigation grant program. That's our house lifting program. We are finishing up phase one of our second batch of grants, and then we're going to be starting phase 2 of that second batch shortly, well, hopefully, depending on GMA and FEMA. You've probably seen some, for those of you who've been involved in the Land Development Code update, some emails and messages going around that we are revising, and we are revamping and reconstituting the Land Development Code Committee to provide that update that started last year. And so we're going to get that back on track. The first meeting will be December 4th at 1 o'clock in the Public Safety Building. So you are all welcome to attend, but it will be a working session with the committee members. So, but public can come and watch. And then, of course, we have sustainability programs, because my department also has the city's sustainability programs, including the Adopt an Area program, as well as, our recycling programs as well. And then going forward, there will be a zoning map update. This is not a rezoning of any areas, but if you look at our map online, the last date on it is 2014. So I will be updating it with all of the zoning changes that have happened since 2014. And the goal is to make an interactive map that you can look online, you can enter in your address, and it'll give you all the information about your property, like Sages, but more Tybee oriented. And then going forward too, we've had direction from council about wanting to go ahead with a sustainability plan for all of Tybee and to tie in all of our little programs under one big umbrella. And then jumping ahead 2 years, we will be updating our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan is good every 5 years, so we currently are working under our 2021 to 2026 plan, so we're looking at the next update in 2026. So, and then with that, my contact information is going to be on the next slide. So there I am, and then I got another QR code if you're really bored and want to go one day and go see it. This one got a little dinosaur. I'm not sure how that happened, but it's it. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Becky so she can have you keep me on my toes. Okay, don't go anymore. All right.
going to start with the absolute most difficult question of the night, so be prepared.
Okay.
Our audience wants to know, do you wish to be called Patricia or Pat?
All right, I am Patricia. So my mother says she didn't name me Patricia to call me anything else. I actually did for a while go by Patty when I was in high school, but my mother-in-law is Pat, and I have a niece named Patty. So I don't want to be confused and start looking for my mother-in-law.
Okay, now we'll get onto the easier kinds of questions. I'm sort of mixing up things a little bit. We had this all organized, but then some of the questions from the audience directly related to some of the things that you said on the slides. So it makes kind of sense that recency of mind that we might talk about those. So let's just hit them one at a time. One question that came from this audience tonight is, what do you see as your role in tree conservation? We know about, you mentioned the permitting to cut trees down and so forth and so on, but what about tree conservation? What measures would you take?
All right, one of the things we've talked about with the Land Development Code update is to bolster the tree preservation, we call it tree removal. Most other cities call it tree preservation. And then looking at as you know, any tree removal permit comes to my department, where our city arborist goes and looks at the tree to see if it's valid, it's a valid removal. And then it gets approved by my staff, and that's Tamika Shannon. What do I see? It's the enforcement, and hopefully two, what my role is and what I see is an update to protect more of Tybee streets.
And then with regard to the zoning map that you talked about, there was some interest in knowing when you think that will be finished.
I was actually hoping to get this done before the holidays, but now I'm thinking it's looking more like January. Once I get started, it's not a hard process. I just have to have the time in my day currently.
Okay, and then also there was a question about the third list of houses waiting to be elevated, and do we have any communication with GMO or FEMA with regard to that?
Yes, so working with our grant manager for the hazard mitigation, mitigation grant program, we have been in contact with FEMA and GMA, and we've asked for a status update, which they said for the last phase of our second batch of grants, and they said, we're working on it, we're short-staffed, but we're working on it. So I did send a formal letter out on City of Tybee letterhead with my name asking for an official feedback and an official response. What they did say is, we can start wrapping up some other batches. So are we making progress? Somewhat. We're in communication though, so I wish I had a better story for you on that one.
And then also, a couple of people want to know about the status of the flood mitigation project.
All right, flood mitigation project I'm drawing a blank on. Can anybody help me out with that one?
It's raising the houses.
Oh, okay, yeah, that's a house raising grant, okay.
Okay. All right. Okay, so let's get back to this list. Okay, so some folks are interested really in this audience about your, shall we say, division itself. And they want to know, do you have what you need? Are you staffed up for what you need? What kinds of expectations do you have about going forward with regard to the efficiency of your department?
All right, I'm gonna go in the Wayback Machine a little bit and talk to you about my consulting work for 20 years. One of the things I did is I wrote a lot of zoning ordinances, I wrote a lot of land use plans, comprehensive plans, and one of the things I did do too is I went and filled in as staff support for cities, counties, parishes in Louisiana where they were in between staff, and so I had to go fill in, whether I was an interim manager, interim director, or whatever. So I came in with no expectations for my staff because many times I started from scratch. My expectations for my staff, I thought, I undervalued them from the get-go by having no expectations for them because I think they're amazing. I mean, I I could always use one or two more staff members, and then we could do more. But my staff right now, so you know, I do have two with sustainability is Tamika Shannon, and then permits and you know, our zoning specialist is Lisa. But then we also have two contract positions with our wonderful drainage engineer, Downer Davis, as well as what we contract with our county for our building inspections and also our plan review. So I adore them all, and I don't think I would have learned as much about Tybee in such a short amount of time if it wasn't for any of them.
Okay, now we're getting a little bit more specific, okay? Some individuals were, let me start over. Let me say this differently. I think everybody in this room would agree that planning, whether you're a city or a company or a family, is a really important process, right? And so planning decisions, we know, really affect everything about it with regard to planning on Tybee. Public safety, public health, resources, environment, and so forth and so on. So the City of Tybee appoints a planning commission. Okay. Would it be feasible, and with a little bit of a caveat here, because we know you've not been on board a very long time, if it's possible for you to have developed an opinion about this so far, would it be feasible, and what would need to happen to allow certain decisions to be made by the Planning Commission to be enforced without further redundancy and deliberation by the City Council?
Wow, that's loaded. I will just default back to state law that says you have to have a planning commission and the city council. Those are your legislators, and they are the ones who, they're only ones who can change the law of Tybee, and the land development code is the development law of Tybee. So our master plan was originally done, I want to say, 2011, and then there was an update called the comprehensive plan that was in 2016. So
development plan kind of follow along.
right. And so 21 was the last update, and so that one goes to 26. So I'll be working on that in 25 and 26.
Okay, now we're going to get into a whole lot of issues with regard to permitting. And they vary a lot, so bear with me, okay? So this question has to do with, as this individual called it, the culture of construction, where there is sometimes an expectation by individuals that they might be able to get construction done without a permit, or they might be able to get construction done with a permit that they don't have to follow. They can do something else, and so forth. So there were several queries about enforcement. How do you do that? What do you intend to do with regard to having feet on the ground for monitoring this, etc.?
Absolutely. One of the things before I came here, I was looking at a dune crossover that I was on site because that was a crossover there construction without a permit. And it was actually two of them today. And both of them are because a citizen had called me and said, hey, do they have a permit? And I'm like, no, go check. So I went on site and absolutely, I'm like, okay, you got a DNR permit, but that's not a City of Tybee permit. So close, but come on, let's go the extra step. And then another one I actually had to stop work on because they had a permit for something that they were actually not working on. They were constructing a dock, but they had a permit to replace the railings on their house. So it's kind of a correlation, but not quite. So I was on site for both of those, talking with the contractors, saying, you need to get with the homeowner and they need to pull a permit. And so got with code compliance too to say, hey, go make sure that, I'm telling them they have to stop, but code has to go there and actually issue the stop work order. So that's what I did after 4 o'clock today. I have been going to, sites almost every day to go check on, hey, I think this house looks too tall. You're at framing, so you're gonna have to have a surveyor come and get the measurements because I think you're over 35 feet tall, because I have a calibrated eye. So yeah, we check a lot, and I do want to enforce it because it's inherently not fair for people who do follow the rules to see people get away with not following the rules. So and I don't know if you heard when the mayor introduced me the first time I was at Tybee, and he said, "Hey Patricia, are you a rule follower?" And I said, "Yeah." And I had a conversation with him earlier that day where I made the same thing. I said, I'm a planner, we're rule followers. So, and it's easier to, judge based on the rules, and it's also easy to defend based on the rules.
We have confirmation from our table.
She does follow the rules even in her own household, guys.
If you were like me, bit of rebellion going on, but we won't go there. Okay, now,
You didn't say he was the rule follower.
with regard to your statement, with regard to the couple of times that you actually went on site and had to get people to follow the rules, there was some intimation that it's hard to always, I don't know how else to say it, except catch people, who are breaking the rules, not following the ordinances and so forth. Now we're talking specifically right now about permitting for construction kinds of activities. The question was, they want to know what can be done, do you think, going forward to have a greater ability on the streets to actually monitor when you don't always know?
And that's a great question. One of the things with, catching a violation is you have to be there to see it. Driving down Butler and you're crossing and you're going from 8th Terrace to 8th Place to 8th Lane, and I'm like, they're all tiny little roads that you cannot see unless you turn in and, you can't see everything from Butler. How we catch it, for the most part, is we're driving by and noticing it, or if people let us know what's going on. Our code compliance division, they do a great job. They are, a lot of it is complaint driven, while they do have their set paths to go look at as well. We can't be everywhere. I'm the only one on my staff that actually goes to the job sites and goes and talks with the contractors. And I'm old enough where, I don't care. Some of the younger staff members do get a little concerned when they get yelled at by grown men, and it's usually grown men that yell at them. But going forward, it's hard unless we know. We've had calls about, hey, I think they're constructing, but the doors are shut, we can't see, can you go in? We can always go in, we can always go knock on the door and find out. Code can also do that as well. But going forward, it takes a community. If y'all see something, let me know, and we can verify if it's permitted or not. You can call Lisa too, since she's the one that processes the majority of permits.
So you answered several questions with that answer, so we're moving right along here. Okay, let's move off of construction a little bit. Well, I will say this. One individual said, well, we have people biking and walking around Tybee all the time. Would you encourage them to get more involved in identifying the question mark that you said? Maybe there's something going on, we don't know, but maybe you could find out. Yeah. Okay, now let's get off of the construction part of it just a little bit. What can be done about Restaurant, bar, music, noise in residential areas that back up to business districts when there's almost no sound barrier in between. It's an ongoing, this was listed as an old problem, it's been around forever. Can anything be done? And if so, what would you look at?
So there have been several complaints about businesses that are on US 80 or Butler. For those who aren't aware, but I'm sure you all are, there's residential right behind, these commercial uses. There's not an adequate zoning buffer, so to speak, between the single-family uses and the commercial businesses on Butler. What can we do going forward is one of the things our new city manager wants to do, and is any entertainment license. I will have a stab at as well, where I write a memo to city council about whether or not how it affects the adjacent neighborhood. As always, with everything with Tybee, an entertainment license is required, an alcohol license is required, and we also have a noise ordinance, and I understand some people are not a fan of our noise ordinance, but it is what we have right now. And we can look at, with council direction, is if they want to address that later on, if it's working, or we just have a few bad apples that are kind of spoiling it for everybody else.
Now, along that same line, this individual is concerned about, quote, having too much of a good thing, and in this case, it referred to alcohol. So we know, because the police have told us, that excessive drinking is one of the biggest threats to public safety on Tybee. Recently, some licenses have been granted to additional places. This individual lists 3. So the question is it possible to put a cap on the number of alcohol licenses that get to the city council? And could good planning in community development help the council balance out this issue for our licenses?
All right, I do want to start out by saying I do not process alcohol licenses or entertainment licenses. That is part of our finance department. I rarely see alcohol or entertainment licenses come across. It might come across if they have a question to ask me out of finance. What can we do alcohol-wise? I mean, there are the distance requirements that the state mandates, from between churches and schools and preschools. But I am not sure how, if you're looking at a zoning amendment to change the number of alcohol licenses or even just a general code amendment. I am not sure how that would be received in our commercial community, but I think that would be something that our city council would address. Okay, straightforward question. Do you agree that variances should be because of a hardship? Is our ordinance fair and strong enough, or does it need to be strengthened with regard to hardship variances? All right, with a variance, and the variance is pretty much uniform in whatever city you go across. Anything that is based on a hardship, some unique situation or a safety issue. Generally, I think with regard to how we require variance, our standards in the Land Development Code, I think, are spot on, and they're equal to every other city that I've worked in. Okay, so let's jump subjects just a little bit. This individual is interested in knowing about your experience in overseeing a master plan, especially since there's a lot of updating going to go on. How will you manage the process to make sure all voices are heard and we get a better product? So I have probably managed dozens of master plans and master plan updates in the course of my career, maybe 30. When I left the city of Arlington, I'd actually started work on Arlington's master plan, where I had $1 million budget for that. So if you go to arlingtonlistens.com, that is, I want to tell you, that is an engagement HQ site where we created it about the upcoming comprehensive plan update for the city of Arlington. We conversely found out here, I found out that we have that same software product, that same online community engagement tool the City of Tybee has, and we're gonna use it for our comprehensive plan, and I'm gonna actually use it for our land use update. One of the things I love to do is outreach. If there's a meeting, I'll go talk. I mean, I will talk to anybody. And then also too, I want to provide information. I mean, people call all the time. Actually, you know, come talk to me, call me, whatever. I want to have the outreach. I want people to be informed.
Okay, so I'm trying to keep up with what we've covered in some way or other. So let's jump to this. It's a fairly straightforward one, and I probably should have done it earlier, but we'll do it now. Okay, how does a citizen find out what flood zone they are in, and what establishes a repetitive loss zone?
All right, so I'm gonna assume that, you know, back when Milton looked like it was, you know, gonna hit Tybee hard, that, you know, our community development director put a little repetitive loss map up, just so people would know that, hey, these areas, not necessarily yours, have experienced repetitive loss, meaning they've had more than one flood insurance claim. How you can find your flood zone is you can come by, talk to me, call me, and I will give you that information. And then if you ever are really, really bored, you can go to FEMA's Flood Service Center, and you can get your own map of your own property that you can create. You can print it out or just save it as a PDF. So, but I'm happy to provide that information. If you are ever on Sages, there is a flood zone layer that you can pull up. And then, you know, for any updated GIS that I hopefully can get to by January, I will create a Tybee specific layer too. But repetitive loss, we do have 99 repetitive loss properties in the city of Tybee. And once again, those are the ones that have filed more than one flood insurance claim. But we send out letters to 5 times that many people. So we have 99, but we do send letters out to 500 people who might just have, because their neighbors have flooded, just to let them know that they are in an area that has seen repetitive losses.
Okay, and to stay on the subject of zones, okay, this individual brings up the fact, or the idea, not the fact, the idea that the city is planning a campground extension in the Solomon Polk area. I, from West Virginia, have trouble saying anything with an L in it. Polk area, okay. So, and a campground expansion there. The question is, are the zoning rules going to apply to the city? Will the city be exempt from the rules regarding their proposed usage? And what types of activities would the city be allowed to do there if it goes ahead?
Have not been in the discussions regarding the proposed, you know, extension of River's End. One of the things, though, our staff has been is all about transparency, and anything going forward is going forward as a site plan. So there is that information going out to the public. My first planning commission meeting, we had the wastewater treatment plant maintenance facility that came through as a site plan. So, I mean, that is on city-owned property. That's actually zoned R1, you know, with the North Park overlay to it. So that was taken from, you know, to Planning Commission as well as City Council. So I definitely encourage transparency in all things going forward, and that they actually go forward as a site
This question indicates some frustration from people that when they have reported a problem as a citizen reporting to City Hall, that it seems to take forever, is this individual's expression, and there's very little feedback. And some residents have kind of given up, is what this individual says. How much accountability to enforce what is in your area, and can you push to get from code enforcement? In other words, what can you do to improve that situation?
Wow, I don't know if I can give an answer to that one. Let me look at the question one more time. All right, please don't give up. Please reach out to me. I mean, if you call me, email me, I will see what I can do. Some things, obviously my hands are tied on, just based on if it's according to code. I really can't give them like a zoning violation letter or have code reach out to them. I do like our code department. I do think they're doing a good job. They are stretched very thin. So I would just ask for some patience, but please reach out to me and I will see what I can do. So please don't give up.
And now we're going to switch gears just a little bit, and we're going to talk about everybody's favorite topic, and that's short-term rentals. So the first question really is, what is your role in dealing with short-term rentals on Tybee? How much authority do you have to ensure enforcement of the codes? And what prior experience have you had that fits in that picture?
All right, what I do for short-term rentals is almost nothing. That is done by our code compliance as well as finance. So any short-term rental permits are issued by our code compliance department, and then the business licensing is issued by our finance team. I believe that any appeals for short-term rental permit denials will come through my department, but for short-term rentals, it is not me, other than answering people's questions when they call about our code and if they can have a short-term rental in their current zoning district. My experience with short-term rentals, if you look at the City of Arlington short-term rental ordinance, which survived, it's up through the Texas Supreme Court. So I did work with short-term rentals in the City of Arlington. I also wrote an expert witness study, a report for a lawsuit against St. Tammany Parish for their short-term rental ordinance, where I was on the county's side, and that case was decided for the parish.
And this says that some of the STR advocates say that too much of the island is zoned for residential. I mean, we saw the map up there, right, the zoning map. And this says that too much of it is zoned for residential. What is your experience? What have you seen that looks like a healthy balance? Can you describe what that would look like between R1, R1B, and R2, or even other zoning areas? Can you address that at all?
A healthy balance is going to be determined on the city itself and where we are. I mean, I have seen many studies that say, Tybee is a suburban community, which it can be. Or it's an urban island. It does not have the amount of commercial necessary truly to be an urban in itself. But for the balance of R1, R2, and R1B, I have not looked at, the breakdown of our number of lots to actually give you a valid answer or even a logical answer. So I apologize for that one.
Okay, so let's jump a little bit to the land development code again. This individual says that the land development code requires in all zoning districts that 65% of the designated setback area of a lot should remain in a vegetative state. So, given that, who verifies that we have that 65% vegetative state, which should be on the drawings for the permit? And how does site inspection verify that? In other words, can you address that issue about that 65%?
So when a plan comes through and people want to, construct, whether it's a driveway, or anything in their setback, we do require them to provide proof of that, which we as staff, meaning Lisa and or myself, or both, verify that the 65% green space requirement is met. When we look at what's called a site final, where you go and verify that what was built, what they said would be built, was actually built, is we verify again. When we do pool finals, there was a time that we're catching back up where we found that pool finals weren't being done. So we had to go back and verify now. We are being more proactive on going and finalizing any new development or redevelopment.
And of course, you have that all locked down after a full 3 months on the job.
I got it.
Okay. Now, this question again, it has something to do with the permitting process, but it's a little bit different. So forgive me that I'm back on permits. This has to do with the access. Once a permit is issued, there is access for a lot of different people to those online documents. Let me change that. A lot of different groups to those online documents. Could you explain the process for how Tybee City groups are involved with the process of how Tybee, let me spread out. It's how Tybee City groups work together to make the process work right. And if they communicate that information to Chatham County, which evidently they do, how does that work? What do they do with that information?
Yeah, okay. When a building permit comes to us, the building application, we review it to make sure it meets zoning requirements, setbacks, height, anything like that. From then, it goes to, once we say, okay, it's the go, no go for any permit application, is can we do it according to our land development code? Then it goes to Chatham County for plan review. So, and they match it up against, the International Residential Code or the International Building Code, and any of the subsequent electrical codes, plumbing codes, anything like that. That is our plan review. That is our contract with the county. When the plans come back, we look at them one more time. We have, if there's any impacts to, water, sewer, drainage to the cities, we have our public works director come out and look at them. And then we look at to see if there's going to be any potential code compliance issues with it, meaning, is it a usual suspect? From then we can issue, hopefully, and sign off on that building permit, and I will sign off on the plan as well. How we all work together is because we call everybody in and let them know. And there's many times Pete just walks in, Pete Goldbrunson, our public works director, and he just says, "You got anything for me?" No, but then he'll mess with our plotter or something like that, and make copies he probably shouldn't be making.
Okay. And I think that one of the concerns was why does Chatham County need that information and what are they going to do with it? And you have addressed that, so that was a big issue. Okay. Okay, let's do a couple of outliers now for the questions. Oh, no, wait. Here's one that goes back to the STR issue, so it has to do with businesses. And it says, I think this means, have there been many or any complaints from businesses regarding the STR reduction plan and how it affects tourism money?
So I am out of the loop on short-term rentals. As I said, that is not my department. In other cities, that would be my department, but it was split out. So unfortunately, I can't answer that question. So I'll see if I can, though, if I can find out.
Okay, this question, I don't know what the acronym means, but it says, in regards to CRS rating, what's the best rating you may achieve?
The best rating you can get is a 1. It's a 1, which means a 50% reduction in your flood insurance premium. Chatham County Unincorporated Chatham probably has enough points to hit a 4, but they can't meet the prerequisites. So there's a lot. So it's very hard to break that 5 barrier going into a 4. So what's the best I can hope to achieve? I can dream of 4. That's my goal. Definitely want to maintain a 5 because that is currently the best in Georgia.
Okay, and then this question is the Department of Transportation going to change Route 80/Butler, whether we like it or not?
On that one, I'm not sure. The road diet has been proposed to make it more walkable, to have back-in parking, to have more landscape improvements. I guess, any of my previous, dealings with any state Department of Transportation is they're gonna do what they wanna do, and they can hope that they get city approval for it. Whether or not it's gonna come to fruition, I guess we'll have to see. And we'll see if we get another presentation from GDOT.
So this question is, can you grade our land development code on an A to F scale? And what needs to be changed?
All right, our land development code was initially written in 1972, and it's had many updates since then. Whether or not it actually, addresses what we feel the needs are, maybe not. I'd probably give it like a B-. I mean, it's a good little code. It so far has mostly worked for Tybee. There are areas that have what I call the dead links in, where it refers to nothing pertinent anymore. It says like in accordance with section whatever, and you're like, yeah, that's the solid waste section that has nothing to do with plats. But with regard to it, I do think it just needs to be updated. We have not had from people I've talked to, have had like an update to our land development code like other cities would have. Monty was telling me that in his 10 years, he does not remember anything being done in the last 10 years. So hopefully this land development code update will start the process of bringing the code where, the residents of Tybee think it would be the best fit for them. And then we can look at having like a regular update or maybe an annual update, so we catch all those things that aren't working, on a more regular basis.
Okay, I really don't know how to ask this question because it has 5 different items. So I'm going to ask it this way. They want to know if the Tybee Land Development Code review process agrees, if you agree that the primary purpose and outcome of this review should be to ensure, and then they list 5 items. I'll read each one.
Okay.
And you say whether you think it should include something about that. The first is promoting sustainable development.
Yes.
Okay? Ensuring housing affordability.
I would say more of housing attainability, not necessarily affordability. Attaining is you're able to not only buy a house, but stay in that house. And, with regard to you can keep living in that house, for generations to come.
Third item, prioritizing environmental protection. For example, the 35-foot height restriction, which you've already mentioned, and existing setbacks without entertaining whimsical variances.
I would hope no land development code has anything about whimsical variances. But definitely prioritizing, the environment, and that is always the case, what we can, and even that is in our purpose of our code to actually make sure that what we're doing now is, one, sustainable, and that it will not be detrimental to the people who come after us.
Okay. And the fourth item, creating walkable communities.
All right, creating walkable communities has always been, at the forefront of everything I've done as a planner, because you want to be able to get around, not just by car, but by foot as well. When I first came to Tybee, I'm like, wow, there's not many sidewalks. So is that planned? Honestly, it's a beach community. I get it. But for walkability, if you ever go to walkscore.com, and they'll tell you how walkable your community is, it's rated on a scale of 1 to 100, with 100 being the best. Arlington was a 34. So it was you had to drive to get anywhere. But I love walkable communities because you can get to where you need to go within a 10 to 15 minute walk. And that is always a dream. Whether or not it's always feasible, that's a whole nother story.
And finally, fostering or promoting equitable access to quality housing.
Now, with Tybee has a different socioeconomic, population than other parts of Georgia. So you're an older population with higher income, and our houses cost more. So I'm always, this is it's a community that, honestly, it's a beach community. So affordability is not always in the forefront of what we talk about on Tybee. It's not to say that we do need workforce housing. I think every community claims the need for workforce housing, where you can live and work. I live in Savannah. I wanted to live on Tybee, but between the cost and then me with being floodplain manager, and I couldn't overcome some professional scruples for that. But honestly, there's always a goal. Whether or not it ties into what the residents of Tybee want, as well as Planning Commission, City Council, that I'm going to work on that going forward.
Okay, we have just a couple of minutes left, okay? So we would entertain any questions that we haven't hit on tonight from the audience if you have something to ask. Yes, nice and loud.
So Patricia, are you the person that we would call and ask about sidewalk on Medon Drive?
Well, I wish you would, but no, honestly, that's going to be Public Works, because if it's a problem with infrastructure, that is Public Works. If it's a new development coming in and I say you should have a sidewalk, then you need to talk, then I'll talk to you about sidewalks.
Anybody else? Oh, okay. Go ahead, sir, nice and loud.
That won't be a problem.
Oh, I get that. I get that now.
Yeah. Patricia, I just have a question. When you're explaining, I understand what your group does. What I'm trying to get my head wrapped around is we have your group, the Chatham folks who do our plan review. Then we have code enforcement, and we have a city a city marshal. When a permit comes out, how does everybody interact? Does the code enforcement know on road, street X, there's a permit to know to drive by? I'm having a hard time getting my head wrapped around how code enforcement, seems to me, should work really close with you, but it sounds like it's a different group, and the reporting and I'm just not understanding how this all flows.
And I did not ask that question very well, and I apologize.
No,
Yeah,
I'm sorry if I gave the impression that we don't work closely together.
Oh, no, no, that wasn't it at all, Patricia.
No, I talk to Wally every day. I talk to Pico Bronson every day. If I was in a bigger city, we might not ever talk, but we communicate through like the permitting process or online, or any permits come in, they have to have a review check by somebody in a different department before they move forward. With Tybee being so small, I can call up and say, hey, Wally, can check this out. Or Wally can say, hey, do they have a permit? And I'll be like, nope. And he goes, all right, I'm gonna go issue a stop work order. Great. Or, we talked to Pete about, hey, did you get anything about the right-of-way encroachment for this property? And, so I talk to them every day. And Tybee is small enough that we can have those tight-knit and those one-on-one conversations daily.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes.
When you receive the request for a permit from a contractor, do you verify that he has a state of Georgia contractor's license as well as a Tybee license?
Yes.
Did you hear the question back there? No, okay. If a contractor, during the permitting process, does the office confirm that they have the right credentials with the state or whoever?
Absolutely. So when a contractor comes in and turns in a building permit application, one, we look at to make sure that they are part of our contractor database on the city, that they have filled out our contractor's registration. And we also require them to give us a copy of their state-issued license as well, not just driver's license, but their electrical, their plumbing, their mechanical, anything like that. We do require it. So anybody that comes in other than a homeowner doing work on their own property, we require verification that they have what they claim to have.
Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
Would there be a possibility of creating a place on the city website to post the permits and street addresses and what they're for, so people who are wondering if what they see going on down the street as a permit could just go online and check without calling you?
It could be feasible. We could create, our permitting database, turn it into a interactive map where you can go online and see it. That is something I'm gonna have to talk over with the city manager to see if that is something, and our city attorney, to see if they're comfortable with providing that information out there so readily.
Okay. Interesting idea. Anybody else? Okay. I thank you very, very much for being such an attentive audience. Good job, y'all. And we need to thank our new Community Development Director. Everybody.